What up, Misfits? Welcome to the Misfit Heroes podcast. My name is Chris, and together we are going on a journey. Now, Misfits, are you happy? Like, really happy? What is the source of your happiness? And if you had one message to tell the entire world, what would that be? Well, those three questions, they can either be an easy thing or a difficult thing for most people to answer. But they create a story that is so intricate that it can display an entirely different viewpoint of the world for everyone involved. My guest this episode is documenting everyone's answers to those questions, and he's created an awesome documentary in the process. Adthe Theo Trepca is the director of Are You Happy?, a recently finished docu-series where he travels the globe asking people if they're happy, and then he follows their path along the journey to that happiness. His documentary vision has created a sort of living film creature where there's no script, there's no act, it's just real people's real reactions to the questions that he's asking. And he wants to ask you those questions too. And then he ran into me, and I asked the questions around here. So, Misfits, I'm going to ask away. Please welcome Adthe Theo Trepca.
Playing the Misfit Heroes podcast.
All right. Well, Adthe, yes, thank you for taking the time to sit down and talk with me. Misfits, here's some behind the scenes. We tried to do an episode a little earlier in the week, and this man is so busy, he was doing a podcast from his car. And I've never done a podcast from a car, but but hey, thanks again for taking the time to sit down with me. I really appreciate your time. I know you're a busy guy.
Hey, it's my pleasure. I am the guy who travels around the world and asks strangers if they're happy. So travel has been a part of my life a lot recently, and something I've always wanted to do as a part of my career. So it's just a matter of managing commitments like this and traveling. Right now, I'm in a 6-year-old girl's bedroom. I'm not even in my own home. It's my niece's room, so I'm just kind of like setting up shop wherever I am.
Well, that's amazing. I'm glad you're here now. I really appreciate your time coming on and talk to me. So, Are You Happy is the name of your documentary. Why don't you tell me a little bit about your documentary? What's it about and all that?
Yeah, so I've been a filmmaker. I've been making films and movies ever since I was a little kid. I've been working professionally as a content creator, filmmaker since 2015. And being hired by studios and ad agencies and brands to create content for them or to direct content for them. And basically all of that money went into like rent, expenses, and my own projects, which were my opportunity to tell my stories or stories I found interesting. And Are You Happy was one of those stories, but it was a little more of an experiment. That I had always, always had it in my head. And the experiment was basically as follows. What would happen if you made a movie in which the script was written as the movie was being made, and it was cast as the movie was being made, meaning the actors are the people you meet in the street, or in whatever location you're in. And the script is whatever words came out of their mouth in that moment. The location would be dependent on where I was that day. The plot would be pushed by the people I met. And that was the most interesting part of it for me, was that I believed, the hypothesis was you could capture life in a certain way, and make it feel like traditional, compelling narrative film. And so that's what I did. I set out to make this movie, and there's a bit to talk about in terms of the actual making of the movie, but that's basically how all of this started.
Now, in doing a little research, this documentary almost didn't happen. Can you explain a little bit about the kill fee situation that happened with you?
Yeah, so as a filmmaker, you basically have two paths to realizing an idea you have. The first path, and the most traditional one, is to package your idea. It's the term that they use in the industry is called packaging, meaning you have a script, you have the actor attached to the script, you have a producer or director or whatever team you have, whatever elements you have as a part of this idea, you package it and you pitch it. And then the second path, the path less traveled by, is the independent path, where you have an idea, you have the funds, and you just do it yourself. You don't wait for approval, you don't seek approval, you don't seek to change your script based off the opinion of someone else. It's just your idea, your vision, your money. And I've gone the first path with a bunch of projects before. So I reached out to the usual suspects when I had this idea, and one of the companies liked the idea. They actually really liked it, and they wanted to help me package it and create it for YouTube. So it was like we hired a celebrity host to host it. We had all these locations. We had a big budget, and as is typical with Hollywood, things aren't really done until they've started. So the day before we were set to start, the company pulled their funding and basically fired me.
Oh wow.
The reason was that in review of my work, they found that they were concerned that my vision or my style wouldn't translate well to YouTube, which obviously was dead wrong, but that was their opinion. And the day before we were set to shoot, they pulled their funding, and they gave me what's called a kill fee. And a kill fee is basically what happens when a project is killed, but the people that kill it want to compensate the people involved for the work they did up until that point. In other words, it's basically a certain amount of money a company will give you to just go away. And for me, it was $2,000 that the work that I'd put in. So they gave me the $2,000, and I was presented with the dilemma of, do I just pocket this $2,000 or do I pursue the second path with it? And I decided to pursue the second path of going the independent route and making this myself. And yeah, that was basically that's the story behind how it almost never happened, but I'm so glad that it actually did.
So you took that money and you went and decided to do this thing all on your own. You gambled on yourself, and now you're traveling around the world asking people if they are happy. So, with that being said, I mean, you've gone from there. What's the answer that has moved you the most?
Well, I think just like going off of what you said about gambling on yourself, I think it's really important for people who are hearing this who have an idea or a goal that no one will ever see it the way that you do, and especially when you're just starting out, you have to take that risk on yourself. You have to invest in yourself and take all the risk on your own, and kind of prove to others that if they were to take the risk on you, that they'd reap the same benefits. So it's you have to really believe in yourself, and that comes from within. But to answer your question of like what answer moved me the most, um, it's tough to say. It's interesting because the answers what people get from the show is less like it's not really what I get from it. Um, what I really like about the show is that it's a movie that happens in real time. And I really like, I'm interested in human behavior. I'm interested in storytelling, and like the answers in which people just open up right away and start spilling out their story. Those are the ones that interest me the most. And like I've had, one of the most amazing stories is I met this guy in Utah, and while interviewing him, he started to tear up and cry. And he tells me about his life story. And after speaking with him for a little bit, he invites me back to his home. And I had just started this documentary, and I was very unsure about speaking with strangers and really going through with it. But it kind of hit me that, this was the experiment, that I would have to allow people to guide the plot forward. And so I did it, and I'm so glad I did, because I got to learn more about him and his family. We went out for pizza. He had this really interesting story. I ended up editing that footage down to a social media video, and it's today has gone on to impact tens of millions of people around the world. Just that one story.
Yeah, it's really quite tremendous. You I see your social media and you're just everywhere. You're all over the place. And you've invited other people to sort of come in and add their takes to it as well. You allow other people to interview others, out in the street, in the world, in their own community. How does that work out? I mean, how can people get involved with that? And, what type of responses have you seen?
Yeah, I think what this show has shown a lot of people is that every single person you come across in your life, every single stranger, every single person driving past you or walking past you or handing you your coffee or helping you bag your groceries, every single one of those people has a story that could move you, inspire you, or entertain you if you just give them enough time to share it. And what I decided to do was test that experiment or that hypothesis and open Are You Happy up for the whole world. That if they wanted to go out and perform this experiment in their own city, they could do so, and I would help them. I would help them get that story to millions of people. And so I've set up a website, happypeople.me/creator, where you could register to become a creator, join our community, share, go out, learn how to interview people, go out and actually do the interview, come back home, upload the interview, and then we take it from there. We will upload the interview to social media, edit it accordingly, and it's worked so well, and it's been so beautiful to see.
I found you on TikTok. Your TikTok is just chock full of stories. I mean, just one right after the other, and it's really quite amazing. Not all the stories have been, um, when you ask these people, are you happy? They can't all be happy. What's your most sort of common response? I mean, are people generally more happy, or throughout the year, have you seen more happiness or less happiness?
When Are You Happy was going viral on social media, it was right around the beginning of COVID. And I think our page was a beacon of hope and positivity during a difficult time for a lot of people. And when we were out there in the field during that time, we were surprised to find that people still found reasons to be happy. And in fact, like those times really helped people focus in on what really matters. And what really matters is less about what's happening 4,000 miles away from you and more about what's happening zero point 0.5 miles away from you. And, that means, what's happening with your family and your neighborhood and your home and your garden and, who's picking up the kids from school and what's for dinner tonight. Those are really the most important decisions of the day. And it's not about, what's on the evening news or what some person said or how some person was offended.
I see a lot of stuff from America, but you've also traveled the world, and I've noticed that a lot of different cultures have different representations of what happy is. Can you speak a little bit to some of the places that you've traveled? What places have broadened your experiences the most as far as what other people think what happiness is?
So I've traveled across the United States. I traveled through India, through Kosovo, United Kingdom, Albania, and sure, there are differences in cultures and beliefs and values. But at the end of the day, I think it's like that Twilight Zone episode. People are the same all over. And no matter where you go, humans really care about very similar things and they fear really similar things. Everybody wants to be loved. Everyone wants to have love, um, be cared about, not be alone. People want to be thought of. People fear being alone. People fear death. People fear the end. People fear illness, being away from those that they love. People fear losing it all, um, being lied to, being cheated, being betrayed. These are all human fears and hopes. And I think our happiness has a lot to do with them. So even if I was in rural India or, metropolitan America, um, while the language might have changed, the meaning is really the same. And that is, we all want love and we want to be loved.
Social media can play such a important role. It's this new tool that we have as human beings around the world. We haven't. It's sort of new, and our relationship with it directly affects our happiness a lot. What sort of relationship do you see that social media? How do you think that plays in with people's happiness? I mean, the places where you've gone where they don't have that as much per se. Have you noticed a difference in happiness with those people than versus where it's sort of a social media centric society like we are here?
It's a great question. I don't know. When I think about the people I've interviewed that don't use social media, perhaps don't even know about it, they have kind of already achieved the same thing that we're seeking through social media, and that's connection.
Hmm.
Um, it's kind of like that story of the story of the guy, the American guy in Spain who wakes up early in the morning and sees a fisherman out fishing. And he asks the fisherman, he's like, "What are you doing?" And the fisherman says, "Well, I'm catching a couple fish for me and my wife and my children." And the American guy goes, "If you woke up earlier, you could probably catch enough fish for 2 days." And the guy, the Spanish gentleman is interested, and he says, "Well, that's very interesting. Tell me more." And the American guy, sits down with him, and he's like, "In fact, if it weren't just you out here, if it were you and somebody else, then you could start catching fish for your neighborhood, and um, you could start selling it." And the guy's like, "Well, my life is pretty simple. Basically, what I do is I wake up every morning, I catch some fish, I go home, I spend some time with my wife, I send my kids off to school. So I don't really need much. My life is already pretty simple. I share the fish with my family. I take a little siesta with my wife in the middle of the day, and then my kids come back from school. I spend the rest of the day with my kids." And the guy's like, but you've got all this free time. You could really use that free time to build a team of fishermen. You could eventually source fish to your whole neighborhood, your city. You could even go international if you're making enough money. You could have boats. You could be out there all day, not just in the morning. You could start servicing Spain.
Right.
And the guy is floored, and he's like, "What? This is insane. Okay, so if I do all this, if I put in all this effort, what then? What is the ends? What am I really going for?" Then the American guy smiles and he goes, that's really the special part, because after all this is done, you'll be able to rest, and you'll be able, I don't know, maybe you could spend your day simply. You could wake up in the morning, you just catch a couple fish for you and your wife and your kids, go back home, drop your kids off at school, take a siesta, rest. You could really live a happy, simple life. And I say that because, like, people who are on social media to connect are kind of doing the inverse, and people who aren't on social media are the most connected. So that's my feel.
That's a crazy parable. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it really, it goes to show a lot. We've got that sort of American dream mentality. You can be this, you can go so far, but this guy's like, yeah, I'm already doing all that.
Right, right. The answer is within. We have already won. We have already. People reach out to me all the time and say, "Well, I'm not happy," and when I take the time to talk to them, I'm like, "Okay, what is the source of your unhappiness?" And they're like, "Well, my girlfriend mistreats me, my parents don't respect me, my boss is undervaluing me," and they list off all these things. I'm like, "Okay, so you have somebody who loves, you have a partner, you have parents, you have a job, you have a home, you have all these things that just having them puts you in the top 1 percentile of the happiest people to ever live." And it seems like we have a baseline of all the things we think that we deserve, like a home and a partner and parents and family. and then our happiness is decided upon like how far off that baseline we get. But really, it should be like recognizing what is your baseline and how lucky are you to have that compared to the world's average baseline. And most people are very, very lucky.
Yeah, for sure. We don't recognize how lucky that we are, and it amazes me that I've interacted with a lot of people in um, less fortunate areas of the world as well, and their level of what I would consider happiness appears to be much higher than we have in these first world nations with these first world problems. It's crazy.
Right.
Who's the happiest person that you have spoke with? I mean, what kicks to your mind the most?
The happiest people I've spoken to are people that haven't necessarily had the happiest lives. Um, it seems that the people who are really have a beaming smile, really have a story to tell and are excited to tell it, are people who have really been through it and they've gotten through to the other side, and they realize how lucky they are to be alive and to be around those that they love.
What has been your biggest sort of takeaway from this? When what have you discovered about happiness as a whole? I mean, how's it applied to your life in general?
I've definitely come to realize that like you really have to, you could plan for the future, and you could plant seeds that you hope will bloom in the future, but there are some things that need to be done now, some things that can't wait, because you never know how much time you have. There's so many people in which their lack of happiness is that they lost people that they loved, or they weren't able to tell them something before they lost them. Or they say, if I just had 2 minutes with this person, it'd really make me happy. But it's impossible because that person is gone. So this whole experience has really helped me take into account what I have, what I how short life can be, how things can change in an instant. And so my hugs are a little tighter, a little bit longer. I tend to tell people I love them more. Um, I do my best to do things that I want to do now and not wait, because you never know. You never know.
Yeah, I mean, we always say life is too short, but it never feels that way as it's playing out. That's kind of interesting. I was actually reading the other day about a Harvard study. It was the Harvard School of Business, I believe. They did a study about about adult development, and it started back in the 1930s. And they took all of these men and followed them and asked them every single year if they were happy, kind of similar to what you're doing. And fun fact, John F. Kennedy was one of the participants of this study, but they followed them, and I want to say they took like 700 and some people in this study, and I think there's like 60 people left. But what they found was, when asking them what made them happy, it was very similar, the same thing: human connection and the relationships that are built throughout your life. All of them, I mean, they had all different types of walks of life: people with poor financial outcomes, amazing financial outcomes. And that was the one key thing, is that everything that was important to them was reliant upon the human connection. If they didn't have that, those were the people that they lived shorter lives. They didn't have that key relationship with other people.
I think that's so important. I think like that those moments, I'm still young and I'm still learning and experiencing new things, but I have a suspicion that at the end of my life, the most important moments will have been the little moments. The just being together with people that you love, sharing meals, and watching things together, being together with other humans, and not the financial achievements, not the the merits I've achieved, or those things. I think it's going to be the really small moments. And that's what life, I think, is all about, is those moments.
So for people that want to check out your documentary, how can people watch, and how can people get involved with what you're doing?
Well, the documentary, we've just finished production on season 1, so it's really exciting. You could pre-save the documentary or pre-order it through happypeople.me. And happypeople.me as in Mary me. And you could also just send me a DM on Instagram. I respond to every single DM that we get, because I really like connecting with people. And if you have any questions or you want to share your answer, just reach out to me there.
Awesome. Well, Misfits, go check him out. I mean, his story is tremendous, and I'm really looking forward to this documentary. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. I think it's a very interesting topic. We didn't really ask you, but what sort of inspired your interest as personally in the topic of happiness to get this whole thing started?
Yeah, that's an interesting question, because I've always been interested in human behavior, but less about psychology, and especially positive psychology. It was never really something that I was very fascinated in, and I kind of just fell into it. But what is interesting about me, and what is interesting about this, to me, is the fact that it's a storytelling device. And how can I explain it? I do have to reference the 1963 documentary Chronicle of a Summer, in which one psychologist and one anthropologist went into the streets of Paris and asked random strangers if they were happy. And so I was inspired just by that question, and then with my own love of filmmaking and love of cinema, I had this experiment to make this totally organic, improv, unscripted but scripted movie. And then I was like, okay, a great device that I can use to open up these stories or crack these stories is asking people, are you happy? So it was nothing to do about psychology or happiness or positive psychology. That was never the aim. I'm so humbled that it was the product of this, that people are finding happiness from it. But to me, it was and always will be a way for me to give a platform to strangers to share their story, and personally for me to just create amazing cinema and impact millions of people through my videos. That it has to be that for me, Chris, because if it's about happiness, I'm not the happy guy. Although people call me the "Are you happy" guy, I'm not that. And what wakes me up in the morning, and what motivates me to keep creating this, is editing and music and human behavior, and knowing when to edit, knowing when to record, knowing what shot, how to shoot it. Because this didn't go viral just because people are super interested in happiness. There's a lot of things that work with these videos, that I've come to learn about how to keep an audience compelled.
Well, I love the concept of your whole situation. I like how it's sort of this living, breathing creature that it's not just a single linear storyline. It's ongoing. What do you think the future is of your platform? Because of that. I mean, what do you think the future is after the documentary is released?
Yeah, I think if you look at our most loved videos, it's really a story of somebody that we met. We meet them on the street, and then they take us on this journey. A lot of what you see now on the page is just the interviews, which are great, and I love them. But what really excites me is the stories. And so I expect that the future of Are You Happy will be leaning more into individual stories. And then the deep future is that it'll always be a presence on the internet where anybody can check in and get a little boost of happiness, positivity, or learn something. And then also, if you ever want to know what's really happening in the world and how people really are, and you don't want to go through a traditional media source, go to pages like this, like Are You Happy, where we're actually out, totally unbiased, because all we care about is truth and love. And like, if you really want to check the temperature of, say, Utah or India, I think that our page kind of serves as that as well.
Well, you mentioned a little bit earlier, you said you're not the happy guy. Now, I can't get away without asking it, but are you happy?
I will say right now I am quite happy, and I've generally been a happy guy throughout my life. We all deal with our own struggles and doubts, fears, failures, and letdowns, and I've certainly had those throughout my life, and I continue to have them, and I will continue to have them. But I've got a loving family, loving girlfriend. I'm doing what I love, and so yeah, I'm pretty happy.
Well, it doesn't seem like you could ask for anything more,
Yeah.
I think you got all the bases covered.
Exactly. What more can I really ask for?
So, in doing the documentary, you've asked all these other people, "Are you happy?" Has anybody interviewed you for the documentary?
Not really, no.
Oh, pick me.
People flip it on me sometimes. I'd be like, "Am I happy? Are you happy?"
Yeah,
But
right.
nobody is really like a structured interview, kind of like how we do them. No, but what state are you in again?
I'm in North Carolina.
Okay. Oh, no way.
Yeah,
North Carolina. Near Greensboro at all?
sort of like an hour away, maybe 2 hours at the
Okay.
most.
Okay. Well, I do find myself in North Carolina pretty frequently, so I'll definitely let you know next time I'm there.
If you're coming from the north, we're on the way. So make it
Okay.
happen, Captain.
Okay. Okay.
Awesome. I love it. It, man. Well, we're winding down towards the end of the podcast. I know you're a very busy guy, so I don't want to take up a whole lot of your time, but I ask every guest at the end of every podcast, what was the last goal that you completed and what's the next goal that you want to set for yourself?
Great question. If you look at the original pitch package for Are You Happy, it always said, this documentary is totally unbiased, no sides, no filters. We want to capture absolute truth. We want to be led by truth. We want to be led by what's actually happening. No glitz, no glamour. And it would all be shot on 16 millimeter film. And I'm a lover of film. I love celluloid. I love 35. I love 16. For those who don't know what 16 and 35 is, it's like the literal film strip. Right now, everything's shot on digital. It's just ones and zeros, but things used to be shot on a film strip. And you have a couple different options, 16, 35, and it goes higher from there, like 70. And it just, that's like the size of the actual film strip. So I always wanted to shoot this on 16. That's how I always imagined it. And when I first started pitching it, people were so against shooting 16 that we never even talked about it. Usually if something is a point of concern, they'd be like, now explain to me this 16 millimeter. But it was so ridiculous in their eye that they never even mentioned it. It was always just like, no, you're shooting digital. And so when I didn't really have any leverage back then. I didn't have my own money. I didn't have any followers. I didn't have much success that people recognized me for. I definitely created stuff that was viewed by millions of people, but it was, my name wasn't really attached to it because I was just a director for hire. But now that I had the leverage and the audience, when I started pitching it for a season 1, like a real documentary series that what you would see on a Netflix, I put it in there again. I was like, we're going to shoot this on 16. And I got really close to closing a deal with this production company. And, they made a fatal flaw in their consideration for funding this project. In that, they sent me this message that was like, in consultation with people who are more experienced than all of us in this field, we've decided that shooting 16 is not the proper path. And it was really difficult for me to do this, but I had to turn down their offer. And so now I was in the, originally I got turned down, but now I was in the position of, I turned down like over $100,000 to do this.
Wow.
And in a way it was very easy, but in another way it was very difficult, because I knew I wanted to shoot it. I knew I wanted to get it done the way I imagined it. And here's this company that will do it, and there's no money out of my pocket. In fact, I'll be making money on it. But the vision I had for it was really important to me, and the fact that I was, with all this leverage, with all this success, and the how I proved myself, there was still doubt that kind of, it concerned me, and it made me think like, all right, well, I guess I'm still not at that point where people say, you know what, Adthe, you're the expert. What you say, will go. And we either take it or we leave it. There's no negotiating. There is no doubt. And so that kind of showed me, well, I guess I'm not there yet. So I'm going to have to do the same thing again, or I'm going to have to invest in myself again at a higher level, at a higher risk, and shoot this on 16. And I did it. Basically emptied out all my bank accounts, and did season 1, and we just finished production. And I can't be more excited. The footage looks amazing. And I can't wait to share it with the world. It's going to be really, really special.
Well, that's amazing, and I think you should definitely stay true to yourself, and I think it shows that you are doing that. And in this modern age, it used to be back in the day, people were so particular about like getting onto a movie screen or getting onto a TV show or something like that. And in the age of the internet, you really don't need that. I see people all the time that create these massive follower bases from that. So I just think keep on doing what you're doing and stick behind your passion. And I definitely think it's going to play out exactly the way you want to. I mean, millions of people have seen you already, and they can't be wrong.
Yeah, exactly. So now it's like, do I want to stay in this level, or do I want to break through? And to break through, I kind of have to take that next risk. And it's just, I kind of like, I have to see the way it's going to play out.
Well, that's amazing. So that was the last goal that you completed. What's the next one you want to set for yourself? What do you think about that?
The next goal is hopefully season 2, and it's going to be bigger and better. And by that point, people will understand. But I want people to understand that I'm not going to sacrifice my I don't want to call it vision. I feel like that's cliche. I don't want to sacrifice what I have in mind for money. And there's no amount of money that any of you can throw at me that will change that. Because I've been blessed with the success of doing it myself, and that has brought me my own capital. So now, like, I turned, like, when the first company offered me funding, it was like $30,000. Like, whoa, that's a lot of money. And then this company offered me like a little over 100,000. I was like, whoa, that's a lot of money. But in the grand scheme of things, there's no amount of money that can change my mind. So if you're listening to this and you want to join this journey and share in the success with us, then you're either with us or you're not. And there's no real negotiating. And I've learned, like, I want my investors to be investors. I don't want my investors to be my creative director, because I like creative directors. I've had them before and they've been really helpful, but I don't want my investor to be my creative unless they get it and they're so much more talented and so much more brilliant than me. Then I'll hear it. But at this point, it's like the old guard is kind of out of touch. So I'm trying to think, like, the top creative director for me would have been like Scott Rudin, like, who's also an investor, but he also is this creative genius. But I don't really think that Scott Rudin would really understand what will work today. I could be wrong, but I just want to communicate that out loud, and to you and to anybody else. It's like, join us, believe in us, because we've proven it over and over before, and we're going to continue to prove it.
Your confidence in yourself is amazing, and I think that's great. I think it's amazing that you're willing to gamble on yourself so much, but obviously it's played out for you well in the past, and for anybody out there listening, you have to take that leap. I mean, and I can tell you that in that moment it's going to be so unsure, but it always plays out for the better. It really does. So, and in your case, I think, I've seen so many of these independent companies that have been created that, I didn't sort of have this on my mind. It just sort of popped in my mind, but there are hundreds of independent movie studios that are they're almost like Kickstarter funded, sort of. They're community funded like that. And I know that somebody is going to want to, let you do your own vision, let you live your life,
Yeah.
I really appreciate you taking the time. I know you're a very busy guy. It really tripped me out when you were driving down the road. I was thrown off because normally I'm used to a set background in the back of everything and everybody sitting at a desk. And then all of a sudden I see like interstate signs going by.
Yeah.
So I know you're a busy guy, man. I really appreciate you taking the time to sit down with me. Give me that website one more time people can check out, and how can people get a hold of you, like on your social media and all that stuff?
So just check out Instagram. Are You Happy Official on Instagram? Send me a DM, and I will get back to you. I love talking to people on there. And then if you want to learn more about the documentary, if you would like to pre-order the documentary, you could do so through happypeople.me.
Happypeople.me. Misfits, go check him out. Thank you again for coming onto the podcast. I love what you're doing, and I think it's going to be very inspirational for a lot of people, and I'm very excited to see the documentary when it comes out. I'm looking forward to it, man.
Thank you, Chris. My pleasure. I'll make sure to send it to you. Thanks for inviting me.
Certainly. Well, Misfits, I'm going to go ahead and wrap this guy up. Thank you so much for listening, and have a great evening. Well, Misfits, we did it. That's our episode. I want to thank you so much for listening, and thanks again to our sponsors. If you want to support any of the sponsors of this podcast, there's affiliate links on the sponsors tab of our website at www.misfit-heroes.com. You can also find links to all of our social media there, so follow us for immediate up-to-date info about the podcast. Please, if you enjoyed this podcast and you want to help me out, do me a favor. Hit the subscribe button down below so you're notified of new episodes as they're released, and make sure to leave a rating or review of the show on Apple Podcasts and YouTube. Truly, Misfits, I love you. Thank you so much for listening. And until the next episode, be kind, love one another, and be a hero.